Hello everybody. Today we're going to be talking about the concept of moles. A mole is just a number. Some numbers have names. You already know some of these. Dozen, or a pair. If I have a dozen eggs, I have 12 eggs. If I have a dozen tires, I have 12 tires. If I have a dozen students, I have, that's right, a dozen students, okay? Dozen means 12. It doesn't matter what you have a dozen of, you have 12 of that thing, okay? The number stays the same. Now, if I had a dozen eggs and a dozen cars, the eggs in the cars would not weigh the same amount, all right? Because one egg weighs less than one car. If I had, I don't know, Cheerios, okay? I could have a dozen Cheerios. And I could find out how much a dozen Cheerios weigh. And then every time I wanted to measure out a certain amount of Cheerios, I could just weigh them because that would be a whole lot easier than trying to count. Counting out 12 Cheerios would not be that big a deal. But what if I needed to count, I don't know, 4,800 Cheerios? I have better things to do with my life. I'm not going to count out that many. So what I could do is I could weigh a certain number of Cheerios, and then I could use that weight to help me figure out how many I have. And if you look at the box of cereal that you have, you're going to notice that that's exactly what they did, okay? Somewhere on the box it's going to say, box filled by weight, not volume, all right? So try that sometime. Take a look at your cereal box. So if I have a dozen of something, I have 12, no matter what that thing is. If I have a pair of something, I have 2, no matter what that thing is. Unless it's underwear. We call it a pair of underwear. I don't know why. We call it a pair of pants. Pants, I know. Pants used to be 2 separate legs. There was no thing connecting it in the middle. You pulled on one leg, you pulled on the other thing, and that's why it was a pair of pants. I know weird stuff. All right. A mole is just a number with a name, but it's a huge number. It's like astoundingly large, okay? A mole is 6.02 times 10 to the 23rd. And if you know scientific notation, you look at that and you go, yeah, okay, that's big. Like, all right, like, why are you freaking? No, you don't understand how big this is, okay? 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. Wow, that's a lot of zeros. So, seriously, people, if you tried to count out a mole of something, if you counted one number per second, if you started the day you were born, all right, you came out of the womb counting, that would be terrifying, and you counted one number every second, you would not have reached a mole yet in your lifetime. If the first human being on earth started counting the moment they existed, and they counted one number every second, we would not have reached a mole. People, if somebody started counting one number every second at the beginning of the universe, at the Big Bang, we would only be to like something like here, okay? The universe, 14 billion years, 14 billion with a B, has not existed for this number of seconds. It is an astoundingly huge number. Ain't no way we can count this stuff. Wow, my southern just came out. Sorry about that. All right. So, we do not try to count a mole of anything. Instead, we weigh it. We have the concept of a mole because one mole of an element weighs the same in grams as that element does on the periodic table. So if I want a mole of carbon, I pull out my periodic table and I look, and carbon has an atomic weight of 12.011 AMU. I do not expect you guys to memorize this stuff, okay? So if I want a mole of carbon, I just get out a scale, I get out a balance, and I measure out that many grams of carbon, okay? Lithium is 6.941. So I get out my scale and I measure out 6.941 grams of lithium. Okay? And so now I know how many atoms of carbon I have. I know how many atoms of lithium I have. I have 1 mole of carbon atoms. I have 6.022 times 10 to the 23rd. I know how many atoms of lithium I have. I have 6.022 times 10 to the 23rd. Oh, but they weigh a different amount. Remember we said that a dozen eggs weighs less than a dozen cars? Because 1 egg weighs less than 1 car? Well, 1 lithium atom weighs less than 1 carbon atom, okay? So, yeah, 6.022 times 10 to the 23rd carbon atoms weighs more than that many lithium atoms. But it's still the same number of atoms. We can't count atoms. They're too small and there's too many of them. So we use the concept of a mole instead. Now, it's kind of hard to weigh a lot of gases, okay? Hydrogen is lighter than air. Helium is lighter than air. You could weigh it, but you would have to do it in a vacuum chamber with no air. That's what makes it float, all right? It's because the air is heavier and goes underneath, all right? It's like a boat on water. The water is heavier. If we take out the water, the boat doesn't float in the air. It would sink to the bottom, all right? A helium balloon is floating on the air. If we took out the air, the helium balloon would sink and it would rest on the scale and we could weigh it. I don't have a vacuum chamber that big. So instead of weighing a gas, we use volume, okay? I'm going to erase this. If you want to go back and write that down, it's on YouTube. You can pause it. All right. Wow, this board is dirty. Okay, if I want to measure out a mole of a gas, I can use the volume at standard temperature and pressure. Standard temperature and pressure. 1 mole of a gas occupies 22.4 liters of volume. So, if I have 22.4 liters of helium, I have 1 mole of helium. If I have 44.8 liters of helium, I have 2 moles of helium, and so on and so on. Okay? So, a mole is a number with a name, just like a dozen, just like a pair. Okay? It's easy. We don't count a mole because it's chronologically and physically impossible. So we weigh them. Nobody is counting your Cheerios. They weighed it. Okay? Nobody's counting your Rice Krispies. They weighed it. We weigh atoms because we can't count them. All right? We weigh it out to know it will equal the same number in grams as it is on the as the atomic weight on the periodic table. And I just said that horribly, and I apologize. All right? So that's how you know you have a mole of a solid. With gases, they're hard to weigh, so we measure the volume. All right? Thank you so much. I hope this helps. Bye-bye.